Well, hello, my friends. Today we start the book of Galatians. Now, Galatians is not a city, but rather it's an entire region. And unlike Paul's other letters, Paul is not addressing the problems of a single church, but rather problems that affecting an entire region known as Galatia, which included such cities as Iconium, Lystra, Derbe, Antioch of Pisidia, and others. Now, Paul wrote Galatians to combat a heretical form of Christianity that tried to blend Christianity with the legalism of the Pharisees. And false Jewish teachers had brought this teaching to Galatia, and it had spread to all the cities. Did you know that almost all the epistles in the New Testament were written to combat various false teachings in the early church? The devil never ceases to try to deceive God's people. Now, the church is still plagued with false teachers today, and we learn important lessons in this chapter that will help us. Now, today we refer to these false teachers of Galatia as Judaizers because they sought to corrupt the gospel with Jewish legalism. And the changes they made were so drastic that they amounted to an entirely different gospel. Verse 6. I'm amazed that you are so quickly deserting him who called you by the grace of Christ for a different gospel. Now, the Greek word gospel translates as good news. But Paul goes on to say that the Judaizers' gospel was no gospel at all because it was not good news. Verse 7 starts out, I'm amazed that you quickly deserted him for a different gospel. Then he says, which is really not another. It's really not another gospel. Only there are some who are disturbing you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. You see, they took the good news out of the true gospel because they shifted the foundation from grace to works. Now, their teaching required being circumcised, which meant taking on all the Jewish laws. It required trying to perfect yourself by following these laws. But you know there is only one gospel by which we can be reconciled to God. We are saved by putting our total faith in God's grace that comes to us through the death of Jesus on the cross. And if we reject this gospel, we reject God. Paul made this clear in verse 6, where we read that to reject the true gospel is to, quote, reject him who called you. Now, these false teachers tried to invalidate Paul's gospel and Paul's teaching by undermining Paul's apostleship. They apparently claimed that Paul was not a real apostle since he came along later after Jesus had ascended and was therefore not like the other 11 apostles who were personally selected by Jesus. Therefore, they said his teaching lacked their authority and was nothing more than his opinions. Now, in order to defend the gospel that he had preached to the Galatians, Paul had to defend his apostolic authority. And this defense makes up a major part of the first two chapters. It begins with the opening sentence, verse 1:1. Paul, an apostle, not sent from men, nor through the agency of man, but through Jesus Christ and God the Father, who raised him from the dead. You see, Jesus himself called Paul to be an apostle on the road to Damascus. And then in verse 15 of this chapter, we read that even before that, God had selected Paul from his mother's womb. Now, not only was Paul's apostleship from God, so was the gospel he preached and all his teaching, verses 11 and 12. For I would have you know, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man. He didn't learn it from man. For I neither received it from man, nor as I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ. In fact, in the last 11 verses, Paul recounts that rather than receiving the gospel or being taught it from the other apostles, he did not even meet them until 3 years after his Damascus road experience. Paul's apostleship was equal to that of the 11 because he too was personally chosen and instructed by Jesus beginning on the road to Emmaus, or road to Damascus. Now, in addition to Jesus appearing to Paul on that road, which is recorded in Acts 9, There are three other times that Jesus appeared to Paul, which are recorded in Acts. In Acts 18, verse 9 and 10, Jesus appears to Paul in Corinth, and he gives him instructions. In Acts 22, verses 17 through 21, it records Jesus appearing to Paul and instructing him at the temple in Jerusalem. In Acts 23:11, it tells of another appearance that took place when Paul was under police protection in Jerusalem by the centurion. Now, in addition, Paul refers to other appearances in his letter. In 2 Corinthians 12:7 through 9, Paul relates the story of Jesus appearing to him to explain why he would not take away a problem Paul had, which Paul referred to as a thorn in his side. And there must have been many more times that Jesus appeared to Paul and instructed him. For instance, in 1 Corinthians 11:23, Paul states that he received his knowledge of the Lord's Supper and its meaning directly from Jesus. Now, this must have been a visitation that's not recorded anywhere in the New Testament. 2 Corinthians 12:1 through 6 refers to other visions and revelations from the Lord, including being transported to heaven, where he received knowledge and understanding that was so heavenly and so profound that he was not allowed to share it with anyone on earth. Clearly, Paul received his gospel and teaching directly from Jesus through many visitations. I'm absolutely dumbfounded by the unbelievable arrogance of some pastors and teachers today who discount parts of Paul's teaching as it's just his opinion, and they claim it just reflects the ignorance and prejudice of an earlier age. They elevate their opinion and interpretations of the gospel over Paul's New Testament writings. But my friends, Paul was taught by Jesus, and they were not. Now, verses 8 and 9 give us an important warning. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel which is contrary to the one we have preached to you already, he is to be accursed. Verse 9, as we have said before, so I say again, if any man is preaching to you a gospel contrary to what you have received, he is to be accursed. We are not to allow anyone or anything to move us away from the once for all testimony of Jesus and the apostles recorded in Scripture. Some today are more captivated by celebrity pastors or celebrity teachers or celebrity prophets with their mighty claims than they are by the Bible's teaching. Others are enamored with angels and mystical experiences. But we are to test everything by Scripture. Of course, many Christians do not know the Bible well, and unfortunately, therefore they are easy prey. Now, it's noteworthy that Paul includes angels here along with humans as ministers of falsehood. 2 Corinthians 11:14 tells us that Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. You know, it's noteworthy that both Islam and the Mormon religion began by an appearance of an angel. It was an angel named Moroni who appeared to Joseph Smith in 1823 and began to give him his revelations that became the Mormon religion. And it was an angel who called himself Gabriel who appeared to the prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam, in 610 AD. Now, this is very interesting. Both angels agreed on two key points. First, Jesus was not uniquely God's son. He was not a part of the Trinity. And second, the Bible, although originally given by God, had been corrupted and could no longer be fully trusted. Isn't that interesting that they both agreed on those 2 points? New Age religion today is based upon revelations from angels and so-called spirit guides. And in the same way, some mystical falsehoods are loose in the church based upon angelic revelations and visitations. But 1 Timothy 4:1 warns us against deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons. My friends, we must all be biblically knowledgeable and on our guard against the false teaching making the rounds today. God bless you and have a wonderful day.